You ever sit there staring at your phone, watching the minutes tick by, wondering why she hasn't replied? You replay the last message in your head a dozen times, thinking maybe you said something wrong. Or worse, you start convincing yourself she's just busy. But deep down, there's a part of you that knows something isn't right. And let's be honest, that feeling doesn't come out of nowhere. It creeps in because her energy shifted. The way she used to light up when you texted, gone. The curiosity in her voice when you talked, faded. You used to be the one she'd call just to hear your voice before bed. Now, silence. And that silence, it says more than words ever could. See, when a woman's into you, you feel it in your gut. You don't have to guess or beg or decode mixed signals. It's easy, it flows. There's effort, there's presence. But when she's not, it's like chasing a ghost that shows up only when it's convenient, only when she needs something or has nothing better going on. At first, you tell yourself it's just a rough patch. Maybe she's stressed. Maybe work's been hard. Maybe she's tired. But how many maybes do you have to stack before you realize you're just avoiding the truth? You're not the priority. You're the placeholder, the emotional seat filler. And it's not always her fault either. Sometimes people just lose interest, and that's okay. But what's not okay is pretending not to see it. Because that's where you lose yourself. That's when you start molding into something you think she'll like. You start texting more, complimenting more, trying harder, thinking that maybe, just maybe, if you show her how good you are, she'll see your worth. But love doesn't work like that. Connection doesn't grow from desperation. It grows from mutual energy. And when that energy's gone, trying to force it back is like watering dead roots. Nothing blooms there. You remember the way she used to touch you, the casual brush of her hand, the smile that said 1,000 things without speaking. That's what real interest looks like. You don't have to question it. But now, even when you're together, she feels distant, like she's somewhere else, on her phone, in her head, anywhere but with you. And you feel it, even if you don't want to admit it. You start second-guessing your worth, wondering what you did wrong, what you should have said, or how you could have been more. But sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes it's just not there anymore. And that's a hard pill to swallow. But the longer you wait for her to come back to a place she's already left, the more you hurt yourself. You see, we get so caught up in the idea of fixing things that we forget we're not the only ones in this. Love is a two-way street. And if you're the only one walking, you're not in love. You're in denial. And I know, it's hard to let go. It's hard to admit that someone you cared about doesn't feel the same anymore. But what's even harder is staying in a place where you're not seen, not heard, not valued. Because every moment you spend holding on to something that's gone is a moment you steal from someone who could actually care. And the worst part, you start changing. You become smaller. You dim your light. You stop being you, just to fit into a space that doesn't even want you anymore. That's not love. That's self-abandonment. And yet, we do it. We hold on because we remember the beginning. We remember the laughs, the late-night talks, the way she used to look at us. And we think, if it was real then, it has to come back. But not everything that starts well ends well. Sometimes people change. Sometimes feelings fade. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Not because you don't care, but because you finally care enough about yourself to stop settling for less. You deserve someone who chooses you fully. Not someone who keeps you around as an option. Not someone who breadcrumbs you with just enough attention to keep you hanging, but never enough to make you feel secure. That's not love, that's control, and you're worth more than that. But here's the truth. Most people don't want to admit. Sometimes they already made their decision, long before you noticed the distance, long before the texts got short or the calls stopped coming. That decision wasn't made in a dramatic moment. It was quiet, subtle, a turning away rather than a slamming door. And that's what makes it so hard to see. Because there was no fight, no final word, just a slow, steady disappearance, and you were left chasing shadows, convinced there was still something there to save. But people don't ghost what they love. They don't ignore what they cherish. And when someone's heart is with you, their actions never leave you guessing. We have this idea that if we love harder, try more, endure longer, we can earn someone's affection, that we can convince them to see us the way we see them. But love isn't a prize you win for being persistent. It's a reflection, a mirror. And if that mirror isn't showing you love, no matter how much you pour into it, it's time to step away. Not because you gave up, but because you finally realized you shouldn't have to beg for what's meant for you. You shouldn't have to explain why you deserve love. It should meet you halfway, open-handed, without resistance. There's something brutal about watching someone pull away while you're still reaching out. It leaves you stranded in a space that used to feel safe. A silence that used to be filled with laughter. But what hurts even more is realizing you were the only one holding on. That while you were crafting messages in your head, wondering how to make things better, they had already started rewriting their life without you in it. And you can feel that shift, can't you? It's not loud, but it's heavy. Like walking into a room where the air doesn't welcome you anymore. Like touching someone who no longer feels your warmth. You try to shake it off, try to ignore the knot in your stomach, but your soul always knows when it's no longer home. And maybe you blame yourself. Maybe you think, if I had been more patient, if I hadn't said that, if I were just a little different. But let me tell you something. Your worth isn't tied to someone else's inability to see it. You are not a mistake waiting to be corrected. You're not a project. You're not unfinished. You're already enough. And if someone doesn't recognize that, it's not your job to keep proving it to them. It's your job to leave. Because staying becomes self-inflicted pain. And pain, when ignored, becomes poison. The hardest part isn't accepting they don't care the same way anymore. The hardest part is letting go of who you were when they did. The version of you that was seen, loved, chosen. You missed that reflection, that feeling. But you have to understand, love that's real doesn't vanish. It doesn't shrink in the face of life. It grows, it adapts. And if theirs couldn't stand the test of time or truth, then maybe it wasn't real in the first place. Maybe it was the idea of love, the comfort, the timing, but not the soul-deep bond you deserve. It takes strength to walk away with no closure, to stop asking why, to stop hoping they'll change their mind. But strength isn't loud, it's quiet. It's in the decision to choose peace over chaos. Dignity over desperation. It's in the moment you stop waiting for a message that's never coming and start writing your own story again. One that doesn't revolve around someone else's silence. Because healing isn't about forgetting them. It's about remembering you, who you are, what you bring. and how much love you still have left to give, just not to someone who didn't value it. So don't chase what's running. Don't beg what's turning away. You deserve someone whose eyes don't wander, whose heart doesn't hesitate. Someone who looks at you like you're the answer, not a question they're still unsure about. Love should feel like clarity, not confusion. Like home, not a hotel. And if you've been stuck in a place where you feel like you're constantly auditioning for someone who already knows your worth and still chooses to look away, walk off that stage. The performance is over. The truth has already spoken. And now, it's your move. You walked off that stage, and for a moment, the silence is deafening. You think walking away would feel like freedom, but at first, it doesn't. It feels like failure, like abandonment, like losing. But what you're really feeling is withdrawal. Because love, even when it's unreciprocated, still leaves its mark. You got used to the idea of them, the way they laughed, the way they said your name, the small routines that stitch them into your day. And now, all of that is gone. The echo of their absence is everywhere, in your coffee, in your playlists, in the way your phone feels too quiet. But don't confuse withdrawal for regret. Don't mistake the void they left as a sign to go chasing them again. That emptiness? It's not a message to run back. It's a reminder to fill yourself back up with you. You start to notice it in small ways. That little voice that begins to return. The one that says you're not crazy, that you saw the signs, that you knew deep down something was off, and you stayed anyway. Because you loved hard, and that's not a flaw. That's your power. But now, that power needs to turn inward. Because while you were busy showing them how deeply you could love, you forgot to save some of that love for yourself. You forgot that you're not here to convince someone of your worth. You're here to be seen by someone who already sees it. And maybe, just maybe, this heartbreak was the beginning of that realization. So you start rebuilding, not all at once, not in some movie montage kind of way, but slowly, quietly. Maybe you go for walks without checking your phone every 2 minutes. Maybe you sit with the silence instead of filling it with memories. Maybe you look at yourself in the mirror, and for the first time in weeks, you don't see someone who lost. You see someone who endured, someone who stayed when it was hard, someone who walked away when it hurt. And there's power in that. There's peace in choosing yourself, even when your heart begs you not to. Because healing doesn't ask you to stop loving them. It asks you to love you more. And you'll have moments where you miss them so much it feels like your chest could cave in. A song comes on, a place you used to go. Someone says their name, and for a second, it all rushes back. The warmth, the laughter, the illusion of forever. But then it passes, and in its place is the truth. The reminder that the version of them you're missing wasn't the one who left. That person existed in the past, and you're here now, breathing, growing, becoming. You survived the quiet, you survived the doubt, and you're still standing. That's not just strength, that's transformation. And I promise you there will come a day when you look back at this moment and you won't feel broken. You'll feel grateful. Grateful that you learned. Grateful that you let go. Grateful that their absence carved out space for something more real. Something that doesn't make you question your worth every morning. Something that doesn't make you sit in rooms feeling invisible. Because you weren't made for almost love. You weren't made to be someone's maybe. You were made to be chosen, loudly, clearly, without hesitation. And that begins with choosing yourself first. So don't look back, hoping they'll return with apologies and changed hearts. Look forward knowing that every step you take away from what didn't love you is a step toward what will. You've spent enough time dimming your light to fit into their shadow. Now it's time to burn bright again, to stop rehearsing the same heartbreak and start writing a new chapter, one where your peace isn't negotiable, where your heart isn't a test someone has to pass, but a gift, one only the worthy will ever get to hold. And that doesn't mean you won't still think of them sometimes. You will. Healing isn't erasure, it's acceptance. It's looking back and saying, that hurt me, but it made me. It's letting go of what could have been and embracing what's waiting for you the moment you stop looking backward. You gave love, you gave time, you gave effort, and that was never a mistake. But now, you give it to yourself, because you're done trying to convince someone to see you. You see you, and that changes everything. You start waking up with a little less weight on your chest, not because it stopped hurting altogether, but because you stopped letting that pain define you. You stopped waking up to chase someone else's approval and started rising for your own reflection. And something powerful begins to happen when you stop looking at yourself through the eyes of someone who couldn't love you. You start seeing the parts of you that you had forgotten. Your strength, your depth, your quiet resilience, the fire they missed, the heart they took for granted, and you realize maybe they weren't the loss. Maybe they were the lesson. There's something sacred in silence after chaos. Something holy in peace after heartbreak. Because once you've been broken in a place that was supposed to be your sanctuary, once you've poured yourself into someone who held you with empty hands, you don't come back the same. You come back with sharper edges and softer eyes. You come back knowing what your love is worth. And you stop offering it to people who only know how to take. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop waiting for closure from people who left doors open just so they could walk in and out when it suited them. And instead, you become the closure. You become the boundary, the full stop, the healing. People think healing is this big dramatic breakthrough, but it's not. Healing is subtle. It's the first time you laugh again and mean it. It's the moment you realize you haven't thought about them in hours, and you didn't even notice. It's when you hear their favorite song and you don't flinch, when someone mentions their name and your heart doesn't race. It's when you delete the old messages, not out of spite, but because you've outgrown the version of you who needed to hold on. That's real healing, quiet, dignified, undeniable. And then one day, someone walks into your life, and they don't make you question your place. They don't give you half love and call it effort. They don't leave you guessing, waiting, hoping. They come with clarity, with intention. They see you, not the mask, not the performance, but the raw, unfiltered, beautifully flawed human beneath it all. And you'll be tempted to flinch, to doubt it, because part of you still remembers the pain. But you'll stay, because you know what it feels like to be on the other side of neglect. You know what it means to be invisible. And you've finally decided that you will never again make yourself small just to fit into someone's shallow love. That's the real glow-up, not the body, not the status, but the peace. The ability to walk into a room and not search for validation because you already carry it within. The ability to sit with yourself and not feel lonely. The ability to say no Not from fear, but from power. You become someone who doesn't chase love, but attracts it. Someone who doesn't tolerate confusion, but demands certainty. And not because you're arrogant, but because you've finally seen how costly it is to settle. So to the version of you who waited too long, who cried alone, who doubted themselves for someone who couldn't choose you, thank you. Because without that version, you wouldn't be here now. Without that heartbreak, you wouldn't have risen this strong. You had to be broken to remember your own strength, had to be left behind to realize your own worth. And now, you're no longer waiting at closed doors. You're building your own. Love will come. But it will come to someone who's whole. Someone who's stopped needing to be fixed. Someone who's not afraid to walk away when the energy shifts. That's your power now. You're not just healed, you're transformed. You're not just over them. You're above the version of yourself that ever thought you had to beg to be loved. This isn't just a story about loss. It's a story about return. Not their return, your own. Back to you. Back to the one who never needed to be anything more than exactly who you are. And the next time you love, it won't come from a place of lack. It will come from overflow. Not to complete you, but to complement the masterpiece you already are. Because the real win wasn't getting them to stay. The real win was realizing you never needed them to begin with.